Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's EquityRT webinar. This one just for you, the rising stars taking on this year's CFA challenge. I first want to thank the CFA Society of South Africa for giving EquityRT an opportunity to be part of this process. I'm pleased to have all of you on board this afternoon for this quick webinar. And show you a bit more about what EquityRT does and how it can help you through your research process. We'll kick things off with a quick intro into EquityRT, who we are, what kind of data we have, what coverage do we have, why global teams rely on us. And thereafter, we'll dive straight into the platform, walk through some of the features, explore how you can use these tools to level up your analysis, and maybe score a few points with the judges. So sit back, stay sharp, and let's get into it. If you have your access open on any of your other screens, you're more than welcome to try and replicate what we do on screen. On your webinar application, you should see a Q&A box. So as we move along, you're more than welcome to pop any questions into those boxes, into the box, and I'll try and answer the questions as we go along. If not, we'll pop a list of Q&A to the all attendees after the session, and then you can follow up and try that out on the platform when you're using the platform again. So again, I'm going to spend the next maybe 5 to 10 minutes just taking you through an overview of what you can get on EquityRT, and then we'll move on to the platform. I do understand some of you might be having some access to other platforms as well. And just to fill you in, EquityRT sits in the same stable like a Bloomberg or a FactSet or an Iris, depending on what you have at your institution or at your workplace. We pretty much play in the same space. We've been around for around about 25 years globally, predominantly in Europe. We launched the African office in 2018, and ever since then we've been servicing a lot of the guys in the investment and research industry across South Africa and in many countries in Africa as well. And these are some of the brands that we've partnered with. I do see some names on today's webinar that we have engaged with previously, so this webinar might seem redundant for some, but please bear with me. Let's get into the high-level view in terms of the coverage in the platform. So what type of data you'll find on EquityRT. We'll go through the various data points. So firstly, global market data. Global market data meaning all your stock market data across the globe, New York Stock Exchange, London Stock Exchange, Hong Kong, etc. We cover about 120,000 stocks across 120 plus stock exchanges. So pretty much the entire globe from a stock market perspective is here. Your open, high, low, close, value traded, volume traded, market caps is what you'll find in the global market data space. Key part in many research reports is company financials, company fundamentals. So we'll run through some of the financial information on the platform, their financial reports. Our history dates back up to 30 years. Some companies, it goes back even further. So you have enough history to run your analysis on. There's quite a large depth of news coverage from across the globe. Your news coming from your main markets like JSE Sense, London Stock Exchange, but we also have news from Reuters or global news wires if you are doing any research on the news side. You'll also have access to analyst forecasts and recommendations, shareholding and ownership information, who owns stock in the company, who are the shareholders of these listed stocks. Your major global indices, if you are doing any benchmarking exercises, you're doing any indice comparatives, MSCI, Dow Jones, S&P, your Johannesburg Stock Exchange, your FTSE indices, they are all in there. You'll find we have access to some fund information, global ETFs, closed-ended funds as well. Your sovereign government bonds, South African fixed income bonds, your major bonds across the globe. You'll find that in the platform. Economic indicators, everything from GDP, PPIs, your treasury bills, overnight rates across the spectrum, covering around about over 160 countries. So most of your major markets would be available on the platform. Your full range of commodity prices, real-time currency rates on the platform, cryptocurrencies as well. So from an analysis perspective, you've got quite a large depth of information within the platform. And what we've done is we've made it very easy to actually digest that large volume of information by creating a range of tools that's within the platform that you can use to analyze this data. The main ones that we'd be focusing on today is on the charting, on the data grids, because between the grids and charts is what you guys will use a lot of during your analysis. The peer analysis is something that's also very useful when running exercises, as well as your stock screening or tools as well is very good for running your analysis. And then we have some other nice to have tools on the platform that you might not necessarily use in this exercise, but it will be good to play around with. We also have an Excel add-in that allows you to extract data in an within an Excel. We have done another webinar on the Excel add-in that explains to you from ground zero how to use that Excel add-in. We actually ran a webinar a few weeks ago for one of the universities. So at the end of this webinar, we'll be sending out a link to the Excel add-in webinar, and you can watch that webinar at your at a convenient time, and that can help you with the Excel add-in functionality. So I'm gonna actually jump out of this for now and just get straight into the platform. And let me just move my screens across. I assume you now can see my platform. If you can just give me a thumbs up, just, so that you can see the platform on the screen. So now everyone is able to see that. Some feedback. Awesome. Okay, great. So what you're looking at is EquityRT. Most of you guys would have received your access with a URL, with a login URL and a username and password for the duration of this challenge. And upon clicking on the platform or clicking on that URL, entering your username and password, you end up on a screen like this. Some of you might end up on, depending on the default setting, might end up on the light screen. As you can see, I can toggle between light and dark modes quite easily using this button on the right hand side. Again, I mean, I prefer using the dark screen. I've asked this question before: why is the dark screen so? Why do this platform comes out in a dark layout? It's because of when you spend a lot of time looking at a screen, the white screen tends to reflect a lot of light into your eyes, and you get tired very quickly. The dark screen does allow you to be less tired when you're looking at a screen for a long time. So that's just a little info on why we have dark and light layouts. For convenience, I'm going to use the dark layout and run through the platform. So as you can see, it's a web platform. So this platform is accessed on a browser. If you have, I'm using it on Firefox. You can use it on Google Chrome as well, and pretty much you can also use it on Safari as well. It is available on an iPad as well, so you can use it on an iPad. Just bear in mind, the Excel add-in does not work on Mac, just because Apple doesn't like Windows. So the Excel add-in works on a Windows PC. So if you are intending to use the Excel add-in, please ensure that you are using on a Windows PC. But generally on the browser, it will resize accordingly, and you go into the platform, and it will look something like this. So I'm going to go into some of the key functionality or key features on the platform. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be going through every single item because it can become a bit an information overload session. So I'm going to focus on the core functions that you're going to use, but feel free to actually use the platform or look through the different functionalities on the platform as much as you like. You can't break the platform, being a web solution. You cannot break it. If ever you get stuck and you find yourself lost in this platform, you can just close the browser and reopen it, and you start back from square one. As I said, I mean, you can't break it because it is a web platform. So I'm going to start off by walking through the ergonomics of the platform. So you'd see what we've done with the platform is you have a search box on the top right corner, and then we've grouped the different categories of information into these sub menus. So if I look at the first menu, we've grouped all of the data types that you need access to sit in this menu, called markets. We have a menu on sectors that actually breaks down sector information. So this could be a good starting point if you're running analysis on a sector. We have holding information in its separate menu where you can analyze shareholder information. For our investment market, we have a stock screener. A lot of guys in the investment space are using our screener to try and figure out which stocks to buy. We have a portfolio solution as well. It's a basic portfolio solution and a strategy builder. This is used by the asset managers quite a lot. And then the analyze menu, Chart Pro, Grid Pro, is some place that I'm going to be spending quite a bit of time on, because this is where you're going to use to extract information. So this is where and actually Grid Pro would probably be your tool of choice, where you'd be jumping in and pulling out data from the platform for your analysis. There's no really need to go into the workspace. The workspace pretty much allows you to customize screens and layouts. However, we'll spend more time on Grid Pro because most of your needs will be to extract information and process that information in some way or the other. So I'm going to start off by looking at the market. So if I look at exchange, and I'm going to start off at exchange. So if I'm going to click on exchange and listed companies, so if you want to look at a specific stock market and you want to look at companies in that stock market, I could then search for that stock market that I want to investigate, and I can very quickly get a list of companies in that stock market. So for example, I searched Johannesburg Stock Exchange. So I could search any of the other stock market exchanges in the world. And as you can see, I have a list of companies. And as I scroll down, this list gets longer and longer and longer. Or I can click on display all, and I can get this full list of the JSE listed stocks onto an Excel spreadsheet. There's an Excel export button on the right-hand side, and you'd find this little icon on most of the pages. This icon basically means that I can dump whatever I see on my screen into Excel. With the listed companies, we also have the ability to actually filter this list. So you can select, for example, only look at micro cap companies, or you want to look at top 100 only. You can click on top 100 and just limit your view to top 100 companies. At the moment, I'm selecting everything. And again, I mean, this gives me a very quick view on a specific stock market if I want to get that full view perspective. We also have a delisted company view as well. So the delisted company view has a region and a sector selection. So I could then select a specific country, and I could select a specific sector, or I could select all sectors and look at who's been delisted in a specific sector. So this is an easy way to pull lists out of the system, company list or sector list. It's quite easy to do that on using this exchange list. I'm going to come back to stock, and we're going to spend some time on stocks shortly. I'm just going to jump to indices. So from an indice perspective, as I mentioned, I mean, we've got quite a large list of indices. I'm looking at an overview. The overview gives me the main international indices that are running, that are basically runs across the globe. But if I want to get down to specific indices, I would look at the index list option. And within the index list option, like I created a list out of the stock markets, I could then, and to look at companies, I could again on this index list select a stock market again, like I've done previously, and I could then display a list of indices. So these are the Johannesburg Stock Exchange indices, your JC Top 40, your All Share Index, mid cap, mining, etc. And again, I mean, this is where you can actually generate a list of indices. If you're looking for specific indices within the larger indices list, we do have a search bar here. So if I'm looking for the mining indices in Johannesburg, I can search mining and I can quickly get a list of the mining indices that are in Johannesburg. And then I've obviously got the symbols that are for these indices, and I've got the names for these indices. If I click on any of these indices, like gold mining index, for example, if I click on that, it can open up a second page where I can get the constituents within that gold mining index. So now I've got the constituents of the mining index on my screen. And again, this is a good place where you can actually get lists or create lists of companies to look at. And this could be starting point for many analytical exercises. Within the indices, you'll see there's other tabs here in terms of indice performance at the constituent level. I've got trading information at an index level. So these are easy ways of actually looking at various cuts of that indice data. Moving along, again, I mean, we've got fund information. If you are looking at funds, there's fund information here. You'll see already it does have a filter option where you can filter out the type of funds. And again, I mean, if you dive into a specific fund, so if I dive into that equity fund there, I have some additional information on that fund holdings, fund performance, income distribution, monthly returns, etc. So if there's any fund analysis, you can find your fund data in the platform as well. Exchange traded funds, closed-ended funds are very similar to funds, so I'm going to skip on that. I'll quickly jump into the commodity page. So from a commodity perspective, you see that we have the full range of commodities. You would notice that there's two icons here, open in Grid Pro and open in Chart Pro. You would have noticed that these icons appear in many of the screens, open in Grid Pro, open in Chart Pro. And I'm going to try and spend at least 10 or 15 minutes just on these two options, because that's where we're going to pull data from. As you can see, I've got various commodities on the screen, grouped into various categories. And again, I mean, I can click any of these ones and look at additional data on these commodities. The same will go for currencies as well. So again, I mean, I've got a list of currencies. And again, I mean, I can look at the US dollar in a specific region, and I can see the dollar crosses with all other currencies. Or I could choose a different currency and look at that currency cross against the relevant currencies. If there's any exercises being done on cryptos, we have the main trading cryptos on the platform. Again, we'll be able to download that historic data. Whilst I'm looking at the screen, you'd notice that there's a little play button on many of the screens. This play button indicates that I can watch a video about the page. So if you are on any of these pages and you see a little play button, it means that there is a video available. It's probably like between 2 to 3 minutes long that gives you a brief overview of what you're seeing on this page. So at any point in time, you can click the play button and watch a little snippet around the page that you are trying to analyze. Moving along, cryptos. From a bond perspective, we have your world bond yields. We have your world bond estimates, and I'll take you to some South African bond data as well. And then we'll come back to the economic overview in a short while, where we can run through the economic data sets that's on the platform. But let's jump all the way back to stocks, and let's look at the depth of company information. I know from a CFA perspective, we look at a lot at company analysis, and we'll start looking at specific stocks and what depth do we have in the stock market data. So let's bring it back home. Let's bring it back to a company like Sasol, or someone that we're familiar with. You have a search bar on top. I can search for any company in the search bar. I can either use the full name, or I can use the alpha code on the stock exchange. If I'm looking to look at MTN as a company, I can very quickly type in MTN, and the ZA option would be my go-to option. And once I click on ZA, it will then bring up the snapshot page for MTN in this case. In the snapshot page, I'm able to see the current share price of MTN. I can see the stock code. I can see the sector it belongs to. I can see the stock exchange that it belongs to. I can see the date of the price that I'm looking at, and I've got the most recent price on the platform, or the closest live price on the platform. On the snapshot page, we kind of take you through a very quick overview of the stock. So as you can see, we've got key statistics of the stock. We've got a price chart. We've got some recommendations and earnings information on the company. We start you up on a peer comparative. So we give you kind of a push start to start looking at some peer comparatives. And we give you information on news on this company. So in this case, I'm looking at MTN. But as you can see on the screen, I'm bringing in all the news items that's relevant to MTN. So there's some news articles on JSE Sense News for MTN, and there's some news articles on coming from Reuters for MTN. So you can see I've got quite a lot of information coming through. And again, to read an article, I can just click on any of these and I can read a article on MTN. Now, I'm going to dive through a few of these tabs to show you the detail that you can get out of the platform. Very quickly stepping into the profile page. On the profile page of the platform, I can see key executives, I can see board directors, I can see subsidiaries of a company, I can see cross listings, so in which other stock exchanges is MTN cross listed. I can also see in which indices do MTN play a part as a constituent. So in addition to this, I'm also able to read biographies of people. That's either in the key individuals, whether they board directors or whether they're key executives. I can read some of their biographies. I can also export these lists into Excel, as I've mentioned before. So just remember, wherever you see the Excel icon, it means I can dump whatever I see on the screen into an Excel file for processing offline. I'm jumping across to financial health. I find this page quite interesting. So when we're looking at running comparatives and running some peer comparatives, it's a good starting place for peer comparisons. What we do on this page is we basically give you the latest view for this company, in this case MTN. We give you the latest view of their key multiples, but then we go one step further. We compare these multiples against world, emerging market, and country medians. So in other words, if I take a specific value and say, okay, what is the price to book value for MTN? How does that compare against the world? How does that compare against emerging markets? And the next question I usually get when I show the screen is, if we're looking at emerging markets, which companies are we comparing against? So if I were to click any of these icons as I hover over them, if I click on that 2.14, which is the price to book value, median price to book value for emerging markets, if I click on that, what it does is it basically gives me a list of companies that median is made out of. So these become MTN's comparative companies or MTN's peer companies in the emerging market sector. So this list that I have on screen here is all the companies that are in the telco space across emerging markets. I will show you under sector analytics where I can actually run more detailed analytics on a sector. But this is a very quick way of doing a high-level sector comparison, specifically at a market level. As I mentioned, we have shareholding information. On the holdings tab, I can very quickly see who's investing money in MTN and who's the largest shareholders of MTN. From an institution perspective, from an individual perspective, in most cases, the individuals are the directors or direct shareholders of the company. I can also see which funds are investing in MTN, so which funds are buying into MTN locally and globally. I can see how the insiders, in other words, directors and shareholders, how their positions have changed in MTN over time. And I can also see specific shareholders, how their buying pattern has changed over the last 6 to 7 years in terms of their investment pattern in MTN. So if you're running any holding analysis, there's shareholder analysis that you can get out of the platform. Again, it means dumping this data into Excel and running your analysis as and when you require. Moving to more relevant data for CFAs and CFA analytics and valuation models, etc. We have the financials of these companies. So as you can see on the screen, I've just brought up a financial tab. There's two different financial tabs on the platform. The first tab you're looking at is a standardized financial. And again, if I take some time to explain this, a standardized financial statement is a financial statement that's standardized for the industry sector. So in this case, I'm looking at a telco company. This is the industrial standardized financial statement. So if I had to compare this financial statement, this income statement against Vodacom per se, these line items would correspond to each other, and I'd be able to compare the revenue of MTN against Vodacom. The as is tab that I have here is the financial statement in a non-standard format. When I say non-standard, it means that this financial statement that says as is identical to what the company has released. So each company might have a unique way of releasing the financial statement. For example, Sasol might have an exploration expense that they declare on the financial statement. You'll find those unique line items under as is. However, if you are making comparatives between various companies in an industry, my suggestion would be to use the financials standardized option, which is your financials option. As you can see, we have the income statement, we have the balance sheet, the cash flow, the earnings snapshot, and then we have some filter menu where you can actually filter out these financial statements in terms of number of periods that you see. You can look at data at a quarterly or annual level. Just remember, the reason why there's quarterly financials is because most of the some Europe companies, and I know US companies generally declare on a quarterly basis. But in South Africa, I know we quite often use, we look at annual results. So I could just change that to annual. I can get an annualized view of these financials. I can look at financials in the original format or the restated format. Just remember, the restated format would be the most recent financials. The original format would be what was originally published by the company. Take, for example, MTN will release financials for the 2024 year end, which is the original numbers, but maybe a year later, the auditors will go and ask them to make adjustments to previous financials. Hence, it becomes a restated view, which becomes the most recent version of that financial. So you can look at either option. And then what I like about this screen is it allows me to convert this financial into any other currency. So I could take this MTN financial statement and I could very quickly convert this to United States dollar to US dollar by selecting a different currency. And it will within the document, it will break down if I go into income statement, it will tell me, it shows me the exact, let's convert this back to US dollars so I can show you what the conversion rate. I'll go to US dollar again. And you'd see here, it actually tells me the rate in which this was converted. Just remember, when converting financials, your income statement would be converted at an average rate for the year, whereas your balance sheet will be converted as and at the balance sheet date. So you do not need to run any conversions yourself. The system will do the conversion for you, and you can actually then download this into Excel. You can actually extend the number of periods that you want to see, and then you can download this into Excel, and then you can use this financial statement in Excel as and how you require. The estimated information is something that you might be using. This is forecast and estimates. So this is what the consensus is saying about what the stock is going to do over the next 3 to 4 periods. This is consensus estimates. So again, I mean, you can look at forward earnings forward the price to book values, forward EPSs, etc. So, and you can see what the analysts are saying in terms of from an investment position. We also compare on this page, compare analyst recommendations to actual numbers. So we can see the accuracy of analyst consensus on the screen. A nice view to look at what the analysts are saying. Something that you might use a lot of is a ratio screen, where you've got quite a bit of information on the ratios. Again, your different type of stocks will have different ratios. So if you're looking at an insurance company, you'll have some insurance ratios. If you're looking at a traditional industrial company, you'll have your industrial ratios. And obviously, if I'm looking at a bank, I'll have the necessary banking ratios on the screen. We've also created a nice page that displays the dividend information as well. So if you're running any dividend analysis, you've got your dividend information for a company on a page, easy to download, easy to take into Excel. And then we've also got your trading information that sits out within the trading information page, where I've got the open, high, low, close. I've got the volumes, and again, I mean, I can extend the date range to download this into Excel. So again, within the stock page, I've got these multiple options that I have here in terms of looking at data at an individual stock level. So if you are deep diving a particular company and you're trying to get into the nuts and bolts of that, you'd spend a lot of time within the stock page. I very quickly want to go into sectors and just show you a sector perspective very quickly. So as I mentioned a bit earlier, we have a sector view that you can look at. So again, this could be a good starting point to do sector analytics. If I take this back home to South Africa, I can look at sector overviews for the various sectors. I've got some key value types that I can look at, and again, because it's an interactive platform, I'm able to click on a specific sector like metals and mining, and I can deep dive into the sector. So these are sector medians, but I could get down into a specific sector and look at that sector multiples, and I can then look at the stocks within that sector and run a comparative. Again, this is giving another way of analyzing, doing some sector analytics. If you want to really run more complicated, so we started off with that peer comparison. You'll remember when we started off in the stock page, we had that initial peer comparison that we looked at in financial health. Then we moved on to the sector overview. And then if you really want to get fancy, we have the sector analytics, which allows you to analyze sectors or multiple sectors as a whole, and it allows you to control the criteria that you want to look at. So for example, let's assume I want to look at a specific region like Africa, I could then say, okay, I want to look at Africa. I want to look at specific cap sizes in terms of how large companies I want to look at. And then I could then define and say, okay, I want to actually look at specific sectors. And maybe I want to look at telco, but I also want to look at banking as well, commercial banking and telco. So I want to base my analysis on commercial banking and telco. And then within my criteria, I just want to look at their market caps. And maybe I want to look at a valuation ratio like, I could look at a valuation ratio like price to book and PE ratio, for example. And when I create this list, it actually turns out a list of stocks, a list of companies in that specific sector that I've selected. And it breaks down the list of value types that I've requested. I have the ability to actually refine this further. So I could say I'm only looking at PE ratios between 0 and 20, for example. I can then filter out my list to a specific sector of stocks. But again, I've got quite a wide range of criteria that I can actually build up in this. So if I wanted to bring in a return on equity, for example, I could then bring a return on equity. And as I continuously add more and more criteria to my, as I add more and more criteria to my list, my table grows bigger and bigger and bigger, and I have more and more information on the individual table. Again, this could be, again, a good starting point to running your analysis. So this could be a good place where you could start a lot of your analytics. And come up with that list. So sometimes we want to do an exercise, and our topic is to look at a specific sector across 3 countries, and you're not sure which companies to look at. This could be a good place to look at, and it also allows you, because of the filter option, it allows you to start grouping companies within a certain market cap or within a certain P ratio, so that your exercise is being run with companies that are similar in nature, and then your analytics will become more meaningful. Now, before I jump into the economic side, let's close that page. I'm actually going to go back to the snapshot. Let's get back to MTN, since we've been using MTN as an example. So I could go back to MTN, and I want to start looking at doing some time series analysis. Because yes, you've kind of seen the overview in terms of coverage, but now let's get stuck into some time series analysis. So from a time series perspective, I want to look at data that's that I can take historically. So for example, I want to look at PE ratios for the last year. I want to look at market caps for the last year. I maybe want to compare Vodacom's market cap historically against MTN market cap. And there's 2 ways of doing this. The one way of comparing data is on a grid, and the one way is on a chart. Both these functions are very similar. The display of the function is obviously one is a chart and one's a grid, but the functionality is very similar. So for example, let's take P ratio as an example, and if I want to look at that. So if I take let's change it. Let's look at bank. Let's take a net bank, for example, and let's look at the P ratio of net bank here, and I'm going to now click on this Open in Grid Pro button. So when I click on Open in Grid Pro, what it does is it actually now takes me to a time series analysis perspective. So it moved me away from single stock, single value. It moved me to a time series value. Now the time series value allows me to select multiple time series. I've defaulted to 1 year, but you can extend this period. It also allows me to actually change this frequency. So I could change this to be weekly data, or I could change this to be monthly data. If I want to look at monthly data, I could change it to monthly data if I want to look at this monthly. What this also allows me to do on this page, it allows me to actually bring in additional companies to run a comparative. So for example, I've got NetBank, but if I wanted to bring in, let's say I wanted to bring in Standard Bank, again, I mean, if you know the stock code, you could use it, and I want to bring in the P ratio, so I could use the search bar there, and I can search for a specific value type. So I search for P ratio, and I can click on add. So all you got to do is add the code, select the function, click on add. So again, maybe I want to bring in another bank. Let's bring in Capitec. I could search for Capitec because I don't know the code. CPI ZA, just remember ZA will be the JSE stocks. Click on CPI, and then I could search for PE in the PE block. Alternatively, if I did not know what the function is, I could click on that little block in the middle. It allows me here to look at information, and I could always run the search here. Or I could then go and say, okay, within the category, I'm looking for a specific ratio. I could scroll all the way down and say, I'm looking for a valuation ratio. And within the valuation ratio spectrum, I'm looking for PE ratio. There's a little I here that tells me what that ratio means. I could click on that. I could find the ratio using the function list. And I click on add. I could add CPI into this list. So now what I'm doing now is I'm actually building up this list. I have the ability, as you can see, I've got the stock codes here, and maybe I'm very confused with stock codes. I can use the setting button here and change that from a symbol to a name. And I can change my precision to maybe 2 decimals so that everything's uniform. And then I've got a nice, neat table for these 3 companies. I can also change the type of view that I have. So for example, I have that view, but maybe I want to change my view where my date runs across the columns. I could change my view into a different perspective, and it allows me to change my view of how my table looks, and I have the ability to export this into Excel. So between your selection, getting to display on the screen, sorting it into, getting it exported into Excel, I can do it very quite easily. I also have the ability to normalize my data. When I say normalize my data is if I look at my current data set, it's 1 year's data. If I want to normalize it, in other words, index it to 100, I can click on normalization and it will index my data set. So now it starts everything off at 100 and it basically creates, it's starting off everything at 100 last year this time. And it basically creates an index perspective where I can monitor the movement of these different value types within this table. The good part about Grid Pro is it does not stop me from bringing one value type in. If I'm trying to bring in more value types, when I say value types, maybe I want to bring in the close price. So I could, for CPI, I could also bring in the close price. I could bring in the close price for Netbank as well, just by adding these in. SBK as well. So then I've got close price and P ratio, close price and P ratio, close price and P ratio. So again, it's allowing me to bring in multiple stocks. It's allowing me to bring in multiple value types. It's also allowing me to bring in multiple dates. It doesn't stop there. If my time series is the same and I want to bring in, for example, I want to bring in a currency, I could type in USD and those are my stocks. If I scroll down this list, and I've got my currencies that are coming up here, but I want USD ZAR. So I could type in USD ZAR _ ZAR, and I could then say, okay, yeah, I want the South African rand to dollar, and I want the close price for that, and I could add that to my table as well. So again, now what it's allowing me to do is allowing me to bring in stocks, allowing me to bring in, I've got market data, I've got some ratios, and I've got currencies in one table. So as I build this up, depending on what I require, at any point in time, I can then export this into Excel. It becomes a very quick way of exporting this data into Excel, and I can play with the date ranges that I want and export this. Pretty much all the screens that I showed you previously across these snapshot page, most of the value data, the quantitative data can be brought into your Grid Pro, and if it's brought into Grid Pro, it can be created into a table and it can be exported into Excel. If you want to get more fancy than what you see on screen, we also have the ability to create custom formula. So for example, let's add in a indice like the all share. I'm just going to add in the all share index. Again, I mean, I'm using the ticker codes because it's easier. I just remember them, but you're more than welcome to type in all share index and you can then select it from the list. I'm just going to bring in the all share index to my list. So now I've got the FTSE, the all share index in that column as well. And I've got my 3 banks and I've got the South African rand. As I said, if you want to become more fancy, we have a custom formula function where I can build custom formula. This is like writing an Excel. This is like writing an Excel calculation, but I can do it on the platform. So let's assume I wanted to work out what is the ratio of Standard Bank's, what is the ratio of Capitec Standard Bank share price relative to Capitec. So I could add a function here, and I'm just going to give it a name, relative price, and I could say Standard Bank's price or Standard Bank's closing price divided by Capitec's closing price, and I can save that. And what it does is it now creates a custom function here. So you can see the custom function is basically telling me that Standard Bank is around about 0.07 off, which is 7% off Capitec's price. So you can build this on the platform. This happens on the fly. It happens in a database. It helps you to calculate large data sets without having to export into Excel and then do it in Excel. So this becomes quite a useful tool from a data extraction perspective. I run a small data set here. you could run a larger data set. Just remember, the larger the data set, the longer it takes to download. So if you decide to actually go 20 columns and max data set, that could be like 30 years of data, 20 columns. Just give the system time to pull that data down. Specifically, it's pulling it down to the internet. So remember, if you've got a very busy computer with a lot of tabs running, and you and your browser is dying, it might take longer to pull. So my suggestion is, if it's a big a lot of fields, a lot of stocks, just back off and give it some time to pull that data down. This will become quite a useful tool for you. Likewise, I mentioned the charting option, and I'll go back to the start again. The charting option is pretty much practically the same as the grid, very similar to what I've shown you on the grid. The difference is the data is visualized as a chart. So here I've got Nedbank's P ratio. I could take Standard Bank's P ratio and run a quick comparatives. Standard Bank's P ratio and Nedbank's P ratio exactly the same way. Filling the stock, filling the ticker code or ticker in the first block by searching for the name or searching for the code. Find the value type you're looking for. As you can see, I mean, we've pretty much got everything under the sun. And then if you can't find it via the search, you're more than welcome to browse through the function list if you're looking for a specific ratio. And then click on add. Once you click on add, it displays it on the screen. Obviously, because this is a chart, we have some added function that is here in terms of, from a chart perspective, you can move stuff onto different screens. So you can move, for example, move this to different panels. If you want to see charts separately, you can keep everything on one panel and move it onto a different axis, like I've done now. Or you can normalize the chart so that you can start everything at specific value and watch the trend move. And like we had on grid, where I was able to chart multiple items, likewise here as well, I can also bring in currency on the same chart if I wanted to. Bring in the close price of currency on the same chart. It might look a bit weird. Actually, I've got it normalized, so you can see everything starting, and I'm looking at the movement of the currency relative to the PE ratio movement for these two companies. Again, allowing you to do multiple chart analysis. And if you are in charting and you decided, okay, that's all good and well, but can I look at the data? There's a little show data option here, where I can then look at the underlying information, and I can actually export this underlying information to Excel. So you have the ability to play around with the charts as well. This is the charts unnormalized. I've taken the normalization out. And you can play around with the charts as well if you're trying to understand trends or understand patterns between different data sets. There's quite a bit of functionality within the chart as well. So if I keep let's get rid of the currencies. If I have two value types that I'm looking at, within the charting option as well, we have added functionality like, for example, linear regression. So if I wanted to run the linear regression, so here I'm running a linear regression between the two P ratios, Nedbank versus Standard Bank P ratios. I'm running a linear regression just by clicking clicking on that little gear icon and running a linear regression between the two. Or alternatively, if I want to add a trend line, or if I want to add standard deviation numbers, I can then apply these numbers to the line. I also can adjust the type of chart that I look at. So again, I mean, this is the charting tool. If you are into charting, if you're looking at trend analysis, you're looking at comparative analysis, this could be another good place to start and create some of these analytical views. As I mentioned, you can download this in the Excel. You can also take this image once you've built this fancy chart. You can take this image into your document. So I could just download this as a JPEG image and stick it into my project or into my assignment as part of the exercise. So you would be spending quite a bit of time on GridPro and ChartPro. If at any point in time you're stuck, just remember there's a video that you can watch on here. And while I'm on that point, I could also take you down to the help center. So under your profile menu on the top, here you can actually set your profile defaults in terms of you want to default that to South Africa or specific country. If I scroll down this list, the one that I want to inform you on is the help center. So if I click on help center, it will take you to a knowledge portal, where in the knowledge portal there's a host of webinars and host of little tutorials in terms of how to use the various functions within the platform. And then at any point in time, if you are still stuck, you can always contact us on support@equityrt.com, and you'd find that in most of all our correspondence, or you can actually submit a query or send us a online request to say, okay, I need some help with something, and then we can help you. So just remember the support address is you'll get us at support@equityrt.com. So just remember, you can always contact us and we can help you if you're stuck with anything. While I'm on that stage, I just want to jump into the economy section, which we didn't dive in, and I'll just basically give you a view on economy. So from an economic perspective, we've grouped in the economic data into this platform. So all the economic data that you need to run your models, maybe GDPs, maybe PPIs, or maybe repo rates or interbank rates, anything of that sort, you'd find under economy. The macro snapshot gives you the various countries. So you'll see these are the countries that we have on the platform. I think we cover around about 160 odd countries that are in here. And each country will have a breakdown of the coverage. So you'll see if I go to South Africa, this is my breakdown on coverage. I've got external trade indicators, about 421 external trade indicators. I've got money indicators, about 141 money indicators. And these are topics that I have within the economic sector or economic section of the platform. And then I have a variety of data sources or data providers that are giving us access to information. So we would, for example, Stats SA is a big contributor to South African economic data. Likewise, the Reserve Bank and SARS. In addition to that, we have some global providers of economic data, being IMF and OECD, as well as the World Bank. So if I want to try and figure out or dive into the data sets that are available, we've again given you various perspectives of that economic data. If I take a country perspective, I can look at the G20 countries and run a quick comparative against the G20 countries for a specific indicator. You'll see there's an indicator list here, and this is just G20 comparatives. I have economic profiles for countries. So if you are looking at a specific country and you want to have a high-level economic profile overview, this is a very high-level view of the key indicators of the country, of a specific country. And again, here you can select the relevant country and break it down into the relevant indicators of that country. But my go-to place, or which I would suggest should be your go-to place, would be the indicator option, where I can look and filter out exactly what I want. So for example, if I can choose my country, I can choose the topic that I'm looking at. So for example, if I'm looking at GDP, I can then select, as you can see, there's GDP data is coming from a variety of sources. There's GDP data coming from IMF, there's GDP data coming from OECD, there's Stats SA giving me GDP data, as well as Reserve Bank, as well as World Bank. So these are all of the sources providing GDP data. The different topics will obviously have different sources. But if I jump to Stats SA, I can then see what GDP data is coming from Stats SA. And again, I've got the frequency. So if the data is coming in different levels of frequency, I can also filter out the different levels of frequency within the platform as well. Again, remember I told you that if I click on any of these, so for example, if my exercise is running on construction companies, I've got real estate companies in a box, and I want to look at GDP in real estate or GDP in construction, I could click on this construction block here, and it'll open up a little bit more detail on the GDP for construction. I can very quickly get that history out of the platform here. I've got a first date and a last date. But what I can also do is I can also view this data in my grid as well. So again, just remember I mentioned that we have this grid pro function. So again, I could very quickly bring this data into my grid as well, where I can manipulate it even further. So again, it started off with a single value on my index list page, was a single value. From a single value, I went into a much more detailed perspective. And then from my detailed perspective, I went into a single list in my data history. And then from here, I went into a full-on historical time series comparative, where I can manipulate and manage the time series. Again, the economic database is quite rich. So we have the main value types that you'd be looking at. For example, the inflation numbers. This is a stats office that says, say, inflation numbers, the various CPIs and PPIs. You'd find that we've got your trade and consumer numbers, your interest and real exchange rate numbers as well, from the Reserve Bank, treasury bills, interbank rates, etc. So all of the data is automated, comes into the platform directly, and you can export this as data series sets using the grid pro function. So again, I mean, I think from a platform perspective, this should cover your navigation of the platform in today's session. As I explained at the end of this webinar, during the course of the next few hours, we will be sending an email out to everyone with the recording link of this webinar. So if you've missed something or you want to re-look at a specific section, you can revisit that webinar. We'll also be sending you a link to the Excel add-in webinar, where that explains you how to use the Excel add-in, which could prove to be quite beneficial, specifically if you're looking at large data sets and extracting large data sets. Just remember with the Excel add-in, just to reiterate, your Excel setup lies in the top right corner. So you'll click on Excel setup, you'll follow the prompts to get your Excel add-in installed. And my suggestion would be to have a look at the Excel webinar when you have free time, and you'd be able to do a lot of this data extraction through Excel as well. So again, with this access that you have for the next few months, you have access to the platform. You also have access to the Excel. Please make use of it. Try and get as much information out of the system as possible. And then just remember, our support address is support@EquityRT.com. We'll also be sending that email address out to you guys at the end of this webinar, so that you can contact us if you are stuck. But just remember, if you are stuck on all the pages, there is that little play button that allows you to watch a video, and you have the help center that's available as well. So you've got the option to watch a video. You have the help center at your mercy. So hopefully you'll actually find what you're looking for through the platform. If there's any questions, I'm going to leave this webinar open for a few minutes. So if there are any questions, please pop that up in the QA box if something comes to mind. If not, please, you can more than welcome to reply to the email address where you received your username and password. Just reply to that email address with any questions that you might have, and we can then send responses to those various questions over the next day or two. Again, I'd like to thank you for your time, and good luck with the challenge. I hope you guys do well, and I'll be looking out to see who's going to be the winning team for this year's challenge. And I might hopefully get a chance to see some of you guys at the closing event. Thanks again, and have a good day further. Please look out for the upcoming emails from EquityRT, and catch you guys soon.